regular meeting. It's Tuesday, November 10th, 2020, and it's 6 o'clock. We are down here in the Town Hall Lower Theater. Thank you for those of you in attendance on Zoom. I'd like to call the meeting to order. And did we get the minute? I did not see the minutes from October 27th.
I didn't see them.
So it appears we'll have to push those off to the next meeting. Next meeting, we didn't get those. So
They were posted at the website.
yeah, we didn't get a copy in the pack information. Actually, we got everything individually. Additions to the agenda for routine administrative matters and/or pressing matters that will require ratification at a future meeting. Do we have anything? Mr. Manager. Do they need to be added to the agenda?
No, not
Okay, so that's not this part. Okay.
No, not for this, yes.
Just wanted to be sure. So there's nothing else. Public comment on items not on the agenda. Does anyone out there wish to speak, seeing there's no one here in the room? Chuck's connecting now. Doesn't look like there's any public comment at this point. Okay. All right, moving on to the manager's report.
Hand out a couple of things for you. You can just take one of each and pass it along to the members. Following up on some of our comments from the last meeting about some of the trustee expectations for operations of the police department, we've been focusing on our community-oriented policing and some of our outreach efforts. As a result of that, one of the things that we've been doing is we were in contact with the people that are currently running the Springfield Outreach Project. I don't know how much you're familiar with that or not, but it's a partnership where the police department works with people in the rehab and health arena to help people that are coming into the system and provide them with some resources and referrals, and ultimately hopeful that the folks that they do come in contact with will eventually come into recovery and maybe eventually stop coming into police contact for drug-related issues. So we met with the Springfield folks and with the folks that are running this, the outreach team. They'll be sending us some additional information. Right now, this is a grant-funded program, so it doesn't cost us any money. There is some materials that they do work with when they go to a client and try to work with folks to, to voluntarily enter and go through treatment. Both the chief and I thought it was a good program. It seems to be having some success in Springfield, and we're hopeful that we can achieve some grant funding and ultimately get some assistance as we go forward with this program as well. So this is just a brief document that outlines the foundation of how the project is set up, how it's modeled, how it's worked in Springfield, and then ultimately hopeful that through Turning Point that we might be able to continue to offer this type of a service in Bellows going forward. So I'll keep you up to date with that program as we continue. The second item is Operation Elves from the police department. It's a program that they're reaching out, asking for gifts and donations. And there's a whole process involved. We'll post this on our website, but I wanted to make all of you individually aware. This was an opportunity, again, for the police department to reach out in the community in a more positive way. And we're hopeful that as this goes forward, we'll be able to help some folks at the holiday season who might not ultimately have some things that in the Christmas season. So just wanted to give you those two pieces of information. We'll post, like I said, we'll post more detail about this on the website and hope that we'll be doing more outreach in the future as, we're working on more of these community outreach type of programs.
Scott, it looks like all the dates on the backside of this first handout on the outreach project are all passed, including a letter of support.
We met with Michael already. We spoke to him. So the chief and I both met with him, and we are currently compliant with the process. So as we go forward, we'll keep you informed, and we'll obviously have to formally accept anything if it comes back to us in the form of a grant.
Right. Okay. And this, of course, would probably most likely apply to number 3 on our agenda as well.
Yes.
And
It's going to be part of that whole process.
Sure. All right, so the zoning administrator, Chuck Wise, is participating via Zoom for the first item on our agenda, which is the rental housing ordinance discussion, to see how things are going. Okay, Chuck?
Can you hear
Yes,
me?
unmute. There we go. Yes, sir.
Okay, so as I'm talking, I can hear an echo. But I'll try to work right through it. We are in the public involvement phase of the rental housing ordinance. We are receiving comments. I'm also meeting with landlords who, some of the bigger landlords in the village to try to get comments. We are receiving comments through the website, which displays the rental housing ordinance on the front page. But right now, we're still in a position of getting edits. The biggest comment that we received to date is making sure there is a balance between the rights of landlords and the rights of tenants. And quite frankly, we have not struck that balance in the current version of the ordinance. So in the case of certain compliance matters, many of these issues, whether you're storing stuff in the stairwells or something like that, that's entirely the purview of a tenant and not, not a landlord per se. So when we're going to be rewriting this with the public comment, that's going to be first and foremost on our mind. So I don't expect to see public comment ending for the next month or two. This is going to be active. We're going to have to solicit input a little bit differently. So in the past, an ordinance meeting like this, you hold a public meeting, you expect 20 to 30, maybe 40 people if you're lucky. We're not going to be able to do public input using mass assembly. We're going to have to just take the show on the road and go to people and meet with them individually and just compile this in a report.
We could use Zoom. I don't know up to how many members it'll handle.
Yeah, Zoom's an option for existing groups. So when we reach out to groups, which we have not yet, we're going to use Zoom for that.
Okay, so will there be language changes, and when do you anticipate some of that? You said that you hadn't struck a balance yet, so when would you anticipate changing some of the language in the housing that rental housing ordinance you presented already?
For me, I'm reverse engineering this. I'd like to see an ordinance that goes with the other ordinances that we're doing, and that would be in January, February timeframe, that a draft would be before the trustees. Ultimately, I'd like to see implementation of this ordinance if it's something that the public can support and the trustees can support. No, talking. Thanks. Sorry, the kids running around.
Okay.
But if July 1st is basically implementation, so we would want to implement this next fiscal year.
Okay, January, February 2021. Okay. Okay. Any questions from the trustees on this item? Jeff?
I have a question, Chuck. This is Jeff Dunbar. Who else have you reached out to for public comment? I don't need individual names, but you said landlords. I'm wondering which other group
So when we do,
need to-
yeah, when we're doing these inspections, I often come with the rental housing ordinance. I say, hey, have you seen this? This is something we're thinking about. So individual landlords get a copy of it. We don't always get comments from those folks. I don't have a list of names, but in order to produce this report, I basically have to show you all the names that we've solicited comments and received things from. So I'm not
Okay,
directly answering your question, Jeff. I could probably email you a copy of the names that I've gotten so far.
That's fine. I guess my concern would be that, like all ordinances, the entire community would have a vested interest. So that to be successful, we'd want to reach out to as many groups as possible. Community members will want to have a voice, business owners, landlords, certainly, tenants may want to. There are management companies, Wyndham Windsor Housing, Vermont Housing, Pathways, Sevka, Parks Place, and certainly police and fire and any of the health agencies. I would I would hope would want to have a voice.
Yeah, when we did this with the nuisance ordinance, I think it took us 5 months to collect all that input. So it was not easy.
No, I understand, but I just want to make sure that for the successful launch of this, rather than push it through without enough, that we make sure that we give everybody a voice. Everybody knows that this is happening and has the opportunity to give a voice rather than say they weren't aware of it, because I'm not sure that everybody goes to our website to find this type of information. So whether it's, you know, something in the newspapers or however we get out there. But
We
I
are,
do want,
my intern is coming back during winter break. She's already started creating a summary. The idea would be to have a 1 or 2 page that we can give out to the contractors, do a bulk mailing. But yeah, I take your point quite seriously. In the
Okay.
past, we've attempted something like this and it's died simply because the requisite public input was never received. And so when it came forward for adoption, we just didn't have that support.
fantastic. I appreciate that you're doing this, and I think that it certainly has value to the community. And I think it's well intentioned. I want to echo, I guess, I did read the early draft and shared comments, but I'm happy to hear that there's a move to clearly define the responsibilities of both the landlords and tenants. I think that without that, it's going to be difficult to enforce the ordinance or achieve compliance. And then, you know, I think that everybody has the same goals. Tenants want a safe environment to live in, but they also share the responsibility of maintaining that property to the level that the landlord is expected to maintain it in. And I think that both need to be held accountable. So thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? We all set. Thank you, Chuck, for that. Very appreciative of moving forward. I realize, you know, just getting back into all that, it's hard to contact everyone. I know that previously, the previous manager had a landlord group who had met a few times over about a year. We one time had tenants too as well, and I think I do not think that tenants issues are addressed appropriately. We never even started a tenant group. And I think we definitely need to have that kind of input as well, because they're experiencing what they have to live with every day. And it's important that we're treating them as equals here in the process, so we can get compliance, which is what we're looking for. That's the whole point. Not dinging them, but a compliance. So thank you. All right. Then we move on to the second item, which is the year-to-date financials. So I'm assuming everyone had a chance to look at them. I printed a copy because we didn't get a packet we've been talking about, but sometimes, you know, you really just want something to write on. So, any questions on the year-to-date financials from the trustees? If you do, remember to turn your mic on. Is it on? Okay.
I have a few.
What is the feedback coming from? Shannon, is that you getting feedback?
Oh, maybe I can mute myself till I answer.
Okay, that'd be great. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. You never know. Sounds fine to you but the other people hearing something else. So, okay, Jakes, go ahead. Thank you.
Okay. On the general fund for the village, there's an item of miscellaneous expense under the village manager. And I was wondering what that was, number one, and number two. Well, I'll find out. I'll say number two if depending on what the answer to number one is.
So the majority of that expense is the trustees and the select board had agreed to pay some of the new municipal managers moving and rental costs for their housing. So we don't have a line item for that. So we put it under the manager's miscellaneous.
Okay, that's what I thought. And So my follow-up question is, have you allocated the village portion among the three entities?
I did not allocate this to water and wastewater, no.
Do we have,
Okay.
do we have an expense line, miscellaneous expense line on water and wastewater?
We do
I
not.
didn't, we don't.
Well, the allocation is based on the theoretical time commitment of the three entities. So I would say this should be allocated in that same proportion that we allocate anything else. That would be my recommendation.
If that is the pleasure of the board, I can make that entry before the next set of
I
financials.
think it needs more
come out.
discussion. I disagree. This particular item that we're speaking about now, without speaking in monetary terms, is not something that is useful to the users and should not, so I do not believe the users of the enterprise fund, so I do not believe it should be reallocated. It's one thing to allocate the manager's time between three departments. That makes sense. And the EA, advertising possibly, and then again, the same thing with the finance staff, but I do not believe that makes sense to put that in water and wastewater. I don't agree.
That's why I had allocated it 50-50 with the village and the town, but whatever the majority of the board decides.
Well, okay, then I'd like to hear from the other board members on this item. Wait,
Can you explain a little bit more why you don't agree?
I don't
Just so I'm
agree.
trying to get a better handle
I
on
don't
it.
agree because I agree that all entities that work within the town hall
hmm
that were, and that they're our share of the village portion, our village portion,
Right.
makes sense that their services and the taxes associated with their health and all that should be allocated as we do to government, water, and wastewater. This is not any of those things. It is a one of that I do not believe should be allocated, split up in the water and wastewater department. That's my reasoning. Because it has nothing to do with servicing water or wastewater.
Deb, could I
has
answer
to
that?
do, it has to do with
One sec.
the manager's cost. Okay, it's as simple as that. So,
Right. And does the manager position oversees certain
yeah,
them,
so it's
correct?
The manager does, but this particular expense was because the village board and the town board agreed to this expense. Not as a service. It's not a service. And that's how I look at that, at the allocation between those departments is because of service. That's my reasoning. But
So-
it has to be what the board decides. What do you say, Shannon?
So, just to give you common practice is exactly what Deb was stating, is that we allocate a percentage of salaries and benefits and retirement and the costs for us to do business. But common practice and prior practice is that one-offs are allocated between the village and the town 50-50 and not to the enterprise funds. But again, that's your guys' decision. I just wanted to give you that insight.
Thank you. Does Stefan or Jeff have anything to say about this item? Since it looks like we might have to take it to a vote.
I'm kind of going along the line with the jigs there. I think it should be allocated between the other areas for the sheer fact that it covers the managerial aspect.
Okay.
So this is a one-time expense.
It won't happen again. That's correct. And we knew we would be over budget in that line because of it.
Would you like
So-
us to get some guidance from the auditors before we make a decision?
Oh, that shift, make the general ledger change.
Since it won't necessarily impact anybody, for if we delay it, because the auditors are coming to see us fairly soon. And I think Shannon and I could reach out to them and get some feedback before your next meeting. And it might save us from having to go back and do journal entries
Back
and
and forth.
adjust back and forth.
My concern here is as well, even if we do it, doesn't matter, that budget line's gonna be over. There won't be any more money to be spent in that line.
Yeah, but that's not the
without going
point.
over.
That's not my point. I'm not worried about that. I think I think it's There's certain categories of expense that get allocated and other categories of expense that don't.
Right.
And this is one of the categories that gets allocated.
I don't see how that accounting wise
So-
is justified. And Scott is recommending that we wait until the auditors come in. Would you agree with that?
Fine, if you want to check with the auditor. I think the question becomes, if the auditor has no particular opinion, the auditor says that basically it's up to the board, which I would think they would.
Right. I think what they'll do is they'll give you what they would be a recommended practice. And then,
Yeah.
depending upon what the normal practice would be, then I think you'd have the right to say, yeah, well, we don't necessarily agree, or yeah, that makes sense to me.
That's fine.
So I think
And-
that's,
And one follow-up, this is the total that we'll see in this account, right?
If he has any other additional expense, the miscellaneous expenses are gonna turn up in there.
I'm asking Shannon,
Oh, Shannon.
is this it?
Well, so everything's in there so far, but like Deb just stated, if there were to be any other miscellaneous expenses that wouldn't fall into a very specific line item that he has in his budgets, then it would increase. At the moment, I can't name anything that I could think of that potentially would go in there, but I don't want to say at this time.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine.
You had a
This,
second question, yeah.
my second item is the audit fees. It appears that there's audit fees showing in the general account, but not in the enterprise funds.
Yep, I'll make those entries.
You'll allocate those.
Correct, I will.
Okay, the IT outside support is at 55% of its budget.
So the
Is that just a timing type thing?
No, so the previous interim manager, because our budgets will be short, specifically with staff numbers, the manager's salary in your specific incident, decided to do some IT things at the sewer department and other departments to make them function more efficiently. And so that line item will be over as well.
I thought that was I thought you gave us that explanation at year end, why the year end numbers were
Yep.
higher than budget.
Yep, and there was additional work that crossed over the new fiscal year.
But that isn't allocated to where it goes.
Yeah, water, wastewater, they should get that.
Yep, it has been.
They have budgets for outside services. And again, the issue, I don't like hearing about this after the fact, that the interim manager thought that this was a good idea. Well, run it by us on this type of thing. But it sounds like if that's where the money was spent, then we might look at those budget items in the enterprise funds.
and Shannon, just to follow up, those projects are now complete, correct? So there will be no additional costs with those additional projects?
That's correct. All of the additional projects are done and allocated. And there was work done for police, fire, water, wastewater, highway, but those are done and they are complete and they have substantially helped those departments.
So if we have anything that we have going forward, we'll certainly bring it to you before we have any additional costs. Right now, we're not anticipating or we're not programming any additional extraordinary expenses for that.
Okay. The other professional fees, there in the where the attorney's fees are, there's another line that says other professional services. It's at like $1,472. It's practically the full amount that we budgeted. What is that?
I can get you
Usually-
I can send you a detail of that account in the email. We've used up a substantial amount of attorney's fees for a variety of reasons, but I will get you the detail to that.
Okay. Then again, just to point out, under the police budget, we're at 53% of overtime, and we know what has been aggravating the overtime. What is surprising is that we're at 33%, which is exactly where we should be for the full-time officer account, and we're one officer short on the budget.
That's
So
that's
why-
because we have not renegotiated the union contract. And so, as you've seen with a ton of the union grievances, we still have obligations to meet, in which this budget and how many officers you allocated does not fit into the old union agreement.
I don't understand what you said.
So, the old union agreement does not comply with 6 full-time officers. So we still have to comply with a schedule that meets the old union agreement, which is 2 officers on, and a variety of other factors. And so we're still abiding by the old union contract. And in order to remain compliant, and as you've seen, we're doing our best, but we're still receiving substantial union grievances because it is hard to comply. So the old budget had 8 full-time officers, and that would have complied with the old union agreement that we're still currently using, because until we come to a new agreement, we have to use the old agreement.
Shannon, maybe
No,
I might help with
that's
the
not-
question here. I think what Jiggs was saying is, I know we've posted the new schedule, but that's only been 2 weeks, correct? So this cost really is more of our previous exposure than it will be the exposure going forward. And I think the concern is that even though we had vacancies, we were still running close to where we would be if we had full complement. So I think that's probably what we'll have to break down to explain how that's going to work going forward.
That's exactly right. So we have come to an agreement with the police officers outside of, and they have agreed to work a different number of shifts with different hours and a different coverage other than what is stated in the union contract. But that has only been in process for 2 weeks, which you haven't even seen in these financials.
Well, the reason I bring this up is that what you're saying is you're taking some of the what I would call overtime and counting it as regular time, thus understating the overtime account. I think
No, absolutely not. Every minute of overtime goes into the overtime line, and every hour of regular pay goes into the regular pay. You've only allocated in this
that doesn't
budget
make sense.
for 6 full-time
doesn't-
off.
It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. If somebody's working a double shift, it's going to be overtime. So, I mean, you're taking 5 people and you're putting the numbers in for 6. It just doesn't work that way. But anyway, I won't belabor it, but it's, manager, I think we need some clarification on this, and particularly in terms of what the expectation is. Okay.
Right.
The expectation is that we're going to get control of this overtime.
Well, I think the new
And-
schedule does reflect a better complement for controlling the overtime, as well as I think you'll see that number, that allocation number, come back down to what you were originally talking about based on where we are with staffing.
What was the effective date of the new schedule?
I think we posted it October. I don't remember the exact date, but sometime after the 20th of October. So I think we've only been in effect for
2 weeks.
maybe 2,
2 weeks. Well,
right, one pay period, one full pay period, and
Okay.
a portion of
well,
another.
we got the overtime reports from Shannon, and the policing overtime was 59 hours for the 2-week period. So if you look at that,
Right.
that's still significant, even if we've been working a new schedule for 2 weeks. 59 hours is a lot of OT.
Well, a lot of
Well,
it was
but
training.
right.
The
And
training,
And Officer Bemis, our Chief Bemis had forewarned you guys about that. That is mandated and in the budget. That's also another piece of the overtime is that all training is overtime, and that a majority of the training that's necessary by law would be conducted over the last month, and it has been.
Okay.
Anyway, the training, I can understand training being overtime, but but that's part of a budget for overtime. But
Mhm.
anyway,
Yep.
I think the
One-
key
just
thing is to
One more
set our expectations.
You got
One more-
overlap of time.
One more point on it is just that 59 hours of overtime in 2 weeks. We have 80 hours because we're only at 5 officers. So we have 80 hours to cover or try to cover a pay period without training, without vacations, without people being sick. And given the COVID, so if someone's sick, they have to have a test, we have to wait a period. So there are extenuating factors right now too that just lead to this. If we have an officer who's sick and they get a COVID test on a Friday and they don't get the results till Monday, they can't work.
Well, we need to get a picture of what this is going to be to project for the year. Because it's ugly and it doesn't make sense, quite frankly.
Well, yeah, I think as we get into the schedule, so by the time you get your next overtime report, we should have at least 3 full 2-week pay periods.
Mhm.
And then I think we'll have a better handle on the trend, and then we'll be able to answer that question in more detail.
Good.
The overtime
That's
report
it.
you just got was
General
based on our old schedule. So you guys have not received an overtime report yet. That would include a full new schedule for 2 weeks.
No, I agree, but
Yeah.
there's some other questions that I think relate back to his overall concern about the consumption of the base amount of salary. And I think we'll have a better handle on that going forward with 3 full pay periods under the new schedule and the overtime as well.
I wanted to ask though, you didn't give us detail on the overtime report, Shannon, that they supplied you, which is, I didn't see a report that actually had more than just the numbers that said what they were doing with them. Like how many of each officer's hours were actually training? I can't tell.
Oh, I could see.
Tells right here.
It was on the report.
Oh, yeah, never mind. My apologies. It's the other column.
That's okay.
Yeah. That's just too much paperwork today. Too many columns.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions on the budget? Anyone?
I've got a couple on the water and wastewater, but
Okay, but let me see if we can get to
Yeah.
general. No? Okay, I did have one question, and that was going back to page 2 of 16. Why the VLCT dues and memberships for the trustees is already over $950 4 months in. That question's for Shannon.
So we only pay that once a year, and they increase their dues from 900 to 950.
Wow. Okay. Thank you. That makes sense, but it's awful. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I did not see that
Yeah.
coming because in prior years there had been no increase.
Right. And isn't that the same? Is that the same line we use if someone takes a VLC class or anything like that?
no.
We'll
No,
use the expenses instead. Okay.
Yeah.
yeah.
All right, Jigs, you had a
So
couple of ways.
you won't
I'm
see
sorry.
anything more in that line item.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I think Jigs has another couple of questions on water
In
wastewater.
the water department, the only question I had was again, we're 4 months into the year and Northwestminster revenue is zip.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
it shouldn't be zip. So what's the story on
Sure. So
good
Great
friends at
question.
Northwestminster?
so we bill them quarterly, and we are waiting for their first quarterly payment. We're actively trying to collect it. It's and if one of the trustees would like to help with collections, that would be fabulous.
I'd be more than happy to.
Yes, maybe I'll come see you tomorrow, or Thursday.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, Thursday. Yeah.
Because we call and email on a weekly basis, so
Jeez.
maybe we
Is
can
this
have.
one? Is this one where the town pays us, or is this where we collect from each individual?
No.
This is the one where the town pays us, so, but they choose to
Okay.
pay us when feel like they're paid in whole, which I don't agree with, but yeah, it's convoluted and it's not always easy. They always pay, I will say that, but it's not always on time.
It's mostly not on time.
But what you're talking about now, I think, is separate from what we talked about last time with the fire protection fees for people that aren't.
Right.
That's a separate issue.
Is it separate or does it include the fire?
That's a separate issue.
That's what
It
I
is.
thought.
Okay, good.
Okay.
That's
Yeah, no,
still
Wade,
fine.
you're correct. That's a separate issue.
Okay.
That might be a manager chat with the manager of Westminster.
We can have a little chat.
Yeah,
I like
just
to get paid. I like to get paid on time. It makes for good neighbors.
Yes,
Yeah.
it does.
yeah,
You have
so
another question?
they definitely, similar to most local places, are running very close to budget. And so they don't have funds until they receive them. So they're at the mercy of their residents.
Right. Well, their taxes were due today too, right?
Yeah, so this isn't their tax money, that they bill them based on our bill. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's user fees. Yep. Jigs. Yeah, one more.
Okay, that's it for the water.
Okay, waste.
Wastewater, I would just again highlight the overtime. We're at 40% of the year. We're a third through it. I will say that the alarm charges were less on this report, but it's frustrating to see overtime when related to analyzing the sludge thing. And again, coming to the board to sell us the sludge stuff it's tough to
Yeah.
see
3 hours.
overtime. It's
3
just-
hours
it's
of
just-
overtime. Yeah.
It's ridiculous. I mean, he's a department head and
So
know.
we didn't want to make him salary. And so he's union, and anytime that they report to work per union contract, they get 3 hours of pay.
Yep.
okay,
That
then
is a budget item, if you'd like to talk about that going forward.
I think for budget purposes,
We
I
can at
think
least
we
have
ought
the
to talk about,
conversation.
yeah,
Okay.
the
we'll make a note.
structure of the management of the
Mhm.
water sewer.
Right.
It's something to at least have a conversation about.
Yeah,
And I did talk to Rob about it, and he still feels comfortable that we will come in at budget for overtime. We would be at 34%, we're at 40, but he will manage that.
well, that's good. That's good. The pump station, one of the pump stations is like at 90% of the budget, or the pump station account is very close to budget. And is that routine, or is there a problem there that has caused these expenditures?
Let me email Rob, and then I'll email the board the response tomorrow. Or I'm sorry,
Because if it's
Thursday.
If it's a timing issue, that's okay. I mean,
He hasn't mentioned anything specific. We're working on one issue that relates to well, I'll have to get back to you on that. I don't think it's that, but we'll confirm that with Rob.
Okay, the vehicle maintenance account is at 82% of budget. I guess one of the vehicles must have had
Something significant.
a problem or something.
No, so we try and do vehicle maintenance prior to our winter season. So we do feel that very confident that this will remain under budget.
Okay. The final thing I had is that the wastewater fund is in a borrowed position of 908,000 on this financial statement. So the trend is still inching north instead of
South.
our desire to see it go south.
And so we did the RCAP study, and so we will, going forward from this year forward, we will dwindle away at that deficit. And we're confident we'll do that, and we've been meeting our revenue goals, and we are also in a good place with our rates. So moving forward, we anticipate that that will decrease every fiscal year.
Okay.
One thing we might want to talk about going forward is because all these folks have moved up during COVID and are living year round now in their summer houses, they're pumping out their septic systems, and our septage capacity has grown dramatically. So that's a per fee. So I think it's 11 cents per gallon for the pump out for septage. So it's something we might want to talk about going forward. It's a revenue source. It doesn't necessarily impact directly onto a homeowner in terms of what they might pay, but it is impacting. It could impact our revenues and help drive down your concerns about your
Yeah,
debt.
for sure.
So it's something we'll bring to you as we discuss the budget going
There
forward
have
as
been
well.
previous discussions about it. Nothing's moved. We charge the same rate, and apparently we're quite competitive, but maybe we're too good.
Well, from my
Well, you gotta-
understanding is
Yeah, you gotta be
this has
careful.
created,
Yeah, you
it's created an issue. Some places have actually stopped taking septage from some
septic.
of these companies just because the volumes are so dramatic. So I think it's probably the right time and the right place to maybe look at that and
Yeah.
bring
You know,
forward
they-
a request for an increase.
One of the, you know, we were working on the contract, and the sewer department works from 6:30 to 2:30. And can somebody bring septage in after 2:30?
It has a code, I think. There's a code on the gate.
They
and just give them
cannot.
the-
They
can't?
cannot.
They
I
can't.
mean,
We
is
want to
that-
have,
good.
if there's somebody in the facility, we want to have one of our folks around.
Okay.
So I don't believe they come in after hours. I'm not aware of anybody
Okay,
coming in
all
after
right.
hours.
No, I
Yes,
don't see overtime.
absolutely,
And I
they
think-
cannot.
I think that's something we should look at too. Is,
Yeah, it was right here.
if-
Stefan thinks
if
they
we're,
can get in, and I thought they could, and now now we realize they cannot.
no, we can't. Shannon said
Just
we can't.
6:30
yeah.
to 2:30.
So anyway,
And if there's a different practice, I'll let you know. But as of now, that was my understanding.
Anything further?
no,
Okay. Anyone else thought of anything over that period? Okay. Looks like we're good on financials, Shannon. I did send you late today a list of questions. Most of them Jug's already are covered. There might be a couple I'm still asking. If you could look at that when you have a chance Thursday.
Absolutely. I'll get you those responses tomorrow, Deb.
Sounds good. Thank you, Shannon.
You're welcome.
All right, we have one more item on our agenda. It's the Community Policing Outreach Project Implementation Grant. Now, some of it Scott has already presented to us.
Introduction, I just wanted to kind of go through some more detail on the memo just to give you some specifics. I know there's a lot of acronyms on here. So the one that's not defined is the PAARI model,
It
just in
isn't.
case you were wondering. That is the Police Assisted Addiction and Recovery Initiative. So in case, as you're reading this later on at your leisure, that'll hopefully you'll remember that.
What was
think-
the I? Initiative, yeah.
Initiative.
Right.
There are some positive aspects to this. I think what it does is provide some additional outreach that, is more along the lines of recovery and support. Obviously, the police still have a job to do, so we're not saying this is in lieu of policing, but what it does is supplement our policing and hopefully get some of the people that are experiencing some problems and having continued issues with drugs, that it gives them some counseling, it gives them somebody to reach out to, and hopefully through that support, then we model some behavior where ultimately people then choose recovery. And, in the long run, we're all hopeful that that's the path that people will take. So there seems to be, from the Springfield experience, that seems to be helpful. This would be a 1-year grant through this planning grant outreach. So we will let you know again, if we're successful, and we'll keep a tab on it going forward. We'll obviously have to bring it back to you if we do get the grant to accept it. And then we'll keep tabs going forward on just how it's working in the community and getting feedback so we can see if this is something that we want to continue going forward. But this is one of the types of initiatives that I think the trustees had asked us to start to look at as we, really try to become more community-based and look at some other options out of the traditional model of policing. So I give Dave a lot of credit. He's been working on some of these initiatives, and I think this is one. It's a no-cost option, and I think it's something that might give us some positive results in the community as well.
I noticed seeing it on the agenda, I'm not sure how this positively impacts a community committee concerning policing, which I spoke to Alex before he had to leave because he has to do another venue, and he said until the month of November calms down, he can't move forward. I believe Mary was going to come in by Zoom, but I don't see her here unless that's the phone number to speak to it as organizing people or getting ready to organize. At this point, I haven't heard any other feedback. So have you heard anything from either of them? Okay. And I had not, and I wasn't sure how this impacts them. Does this help them? Is it anything that can assist a community committee on policing?
Well, I think the committee approach is, again, I think another option for advice and I think input. I think what this is just another program that we're looking at to expand our policing outreach to just not be just traditional policing, right? Where we go, we make arrests, and then whatever happens, unfortunately happens as we go forward through the judicial process. So I think this is just one factor. I think hopefully the committee, if we do get organized, we put together a charge and we put together some community outreach through that, I think is going to be another positive way to reach out and get other ideas and look at what we're doing and make sure that, we're all in alignment. So the sooner we can try to get that started, I think the better off we'll all feel.
So I at this point, I believe that Alex is probably moving closer towards December or the end of the year into 2021 before actually they would be able to get the end. And of course, with winter coming and the COVID issues that we're all hearing about every day, we're probably really looking at January 2021 before we'd see a committee starting to form that would work on some items and bring us some feedback at some point down
Sure.
the line. So,
We'll keep working out, and we'll share what we have with, whoever is going to be working going forward. So it can only be a benefit, the more people we have looking at this and providing input, the better.
Madam President,
wait, let me ask the board members first. You had something,
Yeah,
Wayne?
I had a question for the manager on the outreach project here. Is this something that where one of the officers will be, I guess, in charge of it, for the lack of a better term? Or is this,
No, so basically what happens is there's so let's say somebody has a drug-related problem or offense, then the police, as part of that write-up, also contact the folks through Turning Point, and then they provide some support to the family or the individual, or depending upon the circumstances, other impacted folks. And through that, then they can access services, find some other opportunities to, assist them in recovery. And I think ultimately help them, the goal is to have a person that they can then work through outside of the police to maybe address some of the issues that are impacting their life that also might be impacting, their drug situation. So that's really the goal. It's a partnership. It's not just a handoff for the police.
That sounds good.
So, yeah. And again, we're looking at, trying to change behaviors, and hopefully this model will help us work in that direction.
The gentleman from Turning Point was here last year, maybe the year before, talking about their opening in Springfield, I think. So,
Michael Johnson?
yeah, Michael
Yes,
Johnson.
and he
yeah,
was at the meeting and
came
is
to a
very
meeting.
committed, and
Mhm.
yeah, he'll be a key part of this
Good
project as
Good
well.
resource, yeah.
And if we're successful, like I said, we'll spend time to make sure that we have some information. Obviously, we have to protect people's identities, but we can go through and see what types of outreach is working, what types of issues might be, things that might be being confronted in the community. And then I think it'll help us target maybe some other opportunities that we might want to look at going forward as well. So, this is a long process. None of us expect to have this, we're going to declare victory in a year and all stand up and pat each other on the back. These are long, difficult, arduous kinds of tasks, but I think this is a good step in the right direction. So I think this is something that could be very beneficial.
And the ordinance committee had a visit from the Greater Falls Community Justice Center today at our 9 o'clock meeting to talk about how we can have some alternatives for ordinance violations and things like that in the future. So we're working on that as well. And that segues me into telling the board that the ordinance committee is on hiatus or recess until January 5th. As of today was our last meeting. The majority, except perhaps for one of the ordinances we have on the books have gone through the process. Some of them have come to the board and have been approved, but none of them took we didn't do the 60-day comment period. None of them had that done. That was the next step, and the manager never got to that. So in January, we'll be going back over them, refreshing, make sure there's no new changes that need to be made based upon situations that occur or laws that change. And then we will, if there's changes to those, we'll bring them back to the boards. We'll go through the process and put them together as groupings as opposed to doing one at a time. But that won't be until January, so there won't be any movement. And that also includes things like the rental housing ordinance, which Chuck ran through the ordinance committee as well. So, and he's also a member of the board. We're going to take 6 weeks. We've been at it for like about 3 years. So I think it's time for a little break. Okay. Review agenda items for next meeting, which is November 20. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Mitchell. I forgot you asked to speak. You do have a minute. So what would you like to do?
Well, since I spoke to you last, we had another drug operation open up on Grizzle Drive. In this department, this Blue Mirage, we've been fighting this drug war 40 years. We've done what? In the last administration, 16.5 million. Maybe it's time we take another direction and we invite the feds to come to Bellows Falls. Then what they can do is they can start making that direction and reuse the resources.
Mr. Mitchell, I have to stop you. That was for the public comment period that we had earlier, and you didn't show up for that. This is simply about the Community Policing Outreach Project Implementation Grant. That's all we have. So if you had gotten on earlier, and I'm sorry you weren't able to do that, you would have had the opportunity to speak on the subject you're doing now, but that is not what we are covering here. So I apologize, but I am going to cut you off. We did hear most of what you had to say, and I thank you. And I apologize to have to do that, but review the agenda items for the next meeting, November 24th, 2020. What do we have from here? There was a couple of things.
The police expectations thing, is that?
I sent the consolidated yours, mine, and ours stuff off to the manager and to Chief Bemis, and that was the last thing I did. Okay. I didn't bring us a copy, which is what I should have done.
Yeah,
I'll bring that to the 24th.
Yeah. Yep. All right. I mean, there's no need to have an agenda item for that.
But I'll make sure to bring it. So
okay.
For info. Okay. Hey, I can email it to everybody, sure, as consolidated. That would be fine. Items needed to go in the agenda. Does anyone have anything right now? Anything we talked about tonight needs to go back up.
I have one. Maybe it'd be too soon, but maybe get an update on the sludge dryer.
Oh, I think installs and being done next month, isn't it?
Well, we have pieces of it that we have picked up here. We had the riggers. We're waiting on a schedule. We're hoping that they'll start bringing it here in pieces either end of this week or sometime next week. And then we'll have the electric installed. We're waiting on a couple of items. I guess the transformer, there was something that was not available with the electrician till the following week. So we're hoping to have the full thing up and running. We're really targeting for the end of November so we can start building batches in December.
So maybe there'll be something to put on the November 24th agenda.
Yes. Again, I'm sort of at the schedule of the riggers, and then I
Right.
got to be at the schedule of the electrician. So I'll give you an update on the 24th as to where we stand with those two things.
Great. Okay. Does anyone else have anything else at this point? Okay. Well, more stuff. Let me know if you think of something. Review agenda items for the joint board meeting to be determined. I don't know when the next month we have
I don't
5
either.
Tuesdays. Or is it 6? So
It's
we'll
not-
we got plenty of time.
Yeah.
I think there's one in January or February. January, I think. Review and approve orders, bills, and warrants.
So moved.
Okay, any further discussion on those? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 As a passed. Other business, we'll go down the table. Jeff. Stefan.
Yeah, just happen to be periodically Tuesday nights at the other end of the square here, so that proximity of the T-Bird or the old T-Bird. And I mean, I was up there last Tuesday for about 40 minutes, and I watched, there's a 16 vehicles that went through that intersection by the bridge. 14 of them never even stopped at the stop sign.
So we do need some attention there, clearly at the bridge. Especially in the evenings. I don't know about during the day. I'm not seeing a lot of it, but I have seen some chain ups where people, 2 and 3 cars go through the stop sign instead of waiting their turn politely. Okay, anything else, Stefan? Okay, Jakes?
Just, I do like receiving the police and fire log and the overtime report by email. I do like that, and I appreciate the staff's effort to do that. I also noted that that fencing has been installed on the north side of our favorite Atkinson Street property.
Right.
And anyway, so that's a good thing.
Is that cattle fencing? That looks like cattle fencing. That's what I thought, yeah. Yeah, well, we have no
An
cattle.
old project, so we didn't buy it new. It was
Yeah,
something we had.
That's good. I'm glad
Right.
it was available. That's the best. Yeah. Wade,
I guess the only question I had was not really, did we find out or anything about that? Talk about the bridge, the camera or whatever it was they installed?
oh, no, but you said, Stefan, did you not, that you saw one in Springfield, you saw one in Westminster?
I believe there's one in Westminster. I believe there's one in Springfield. It looked like there was one up on the border in Lebanon. So I would imagine.
It's a state thing.
I've had a call out to VT Trans to try
V-Trans
to
probably.
follow up, and
Yeah, it's probably a V-Trans. When I talked to the AGC,
Yeah.
the closest they said was, it's probably something that has to do with traffic study that they're doing. It's not about COVID. He said it wasn't
Expensive
related
traffic
on that.
studies,
I know.
Very sophisticated license plate readers, et cetera.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just curious what, because
didn't get any feedback yet or follow up, so
So we
we'll try.
don't
We'll
know.
continue.
Still curiosity.
I would have thought before they went up, it would have been a nice courtesy to have some discussion in the community or communities about that.
Yeah,
I know a lot of people have different feelings about stuff like that.
I know. Surveillance, right?
Well, that's what it amounts to.
Yeah, it does. Anything else, Wade?
Nope.
The only other thing that I would bring up has to do with Buckley lot, the Buckley lot. I brought that into your attention. I checked, my husband checked with Andy Howarth. It appears that the logs that have been cut down in there have nothing to do with them. And they appear to have been carved down to stake level so that you could actually put them in the ground. They're pointed on the end like a pencil. Why that's being done, I don't know. I do realize that Chief Bemis had told me he knew that there's somebody over there. Like they had moved away from the Waypoint Center where they're being discouraged from hanging out. And there is a number of items there that appear someone is at least spending the day there. But now there are trees cut down and a number of logs have been set up as though they're going to make a shelter. So I don't know what we can do about that. All that stuff is pretty touchy and I haven't seen anyone there, but I
Yeah,
have seen the activity that's been left behind. So,
yeah. It's a tough one. We're chasing ghosts at the moment, but
Yeah.
yes, we're working on it.
so there's and this week might be nice and the weekend was nice, but it's not going to stay nice. So, it'll be too cold for a shelter, for sure. All right. There is no need for an executive session this evening. And I need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
All right. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Thank you, folks in the audience, and good night.